I've worked with a lot of business owners earning $500,000, $1 million, and even over $50 million in profit per year. And I've noticed the exact same mistake over and over again. They've spent the last decade or two building incredible businesses, but have failed to build wealth outside of it. So when they're ready to retire or want to exit the business, they have no assets working for them, leaving them with no real wealth. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how business owners like you can use your business to fuel wealth creation through property and set yourself up for real financial freedom in the future. Not only am I a business owner, but I'm also a property investor with a portfolio worth over $10 million, which I'm still actively growing today. I'm going to walk you through 3 phases of what we call the Trident strategy. So phase 1, we want to have a look at how we're earning our money and how we look to distribute it tax effectively. So let's just say we own a company and we're earning $1 million in net profit. If we look to distribute this income to you as an individual, you are going to be taxed at the top marginal tax rate associated with your personal income. And this is an inefficient and ineffective way for us to get money out of the business. What we really want to understand is if we are holding, let's just say, a home loan debt, and the home's worth 5 mil, and we've got $3 million worth of debt against that business. A big part of our strategy needs to be understanding how we can get this income out of the business to be able to clear this debt as tax effectively as possible. This is how I would look to do it. Let's say we are a husband and wife, and we also have the ability to leverage, say, mum or dad's marginal tax rates, who may or may not be working, to be able to assist with getting some additional income out of the business. So what we've done for many clients is, instead of us looking to move that full $1 million out of the business to us personally to then help pay down this home loan, what we would look to do is distribute, let's call it 190, 190, and 190. Now, the reason for 190 is that we're keeping this income for these 3 individuals at a tax rate that sits at 37%. That's a 10% saving in tax if you were to pay that all to yourself as an individual at that top level. Now, why this is interesting is, even though we're not paying a larger chunk of the mortgage off, we're saving a considerable amount of tax here. And this is something that we've tried and tested with our clients' accounting partners, and we need to make sure that you do the same at home. The reason this is so important is, when it comes to taking money out of the business, we want to make sure we're not giving away too much to the ATO, but we want to be able to see and use as much of this as possible to help us on our property investing journey. So if we're looking to move $570,000 out of the business via individual tax distributions, we're going to have $430,000 left that has not been distributed. So this is where we really need to pick our timing of when we look to distribute income. Because if we were to move the full amount, so that $1 million, we're going to pay more than we need to. But if we're able to leverage individual marginal rates at different times, depending on who's earning what and in what financial year we're in as well, we can look to get as much of this income out as possible, and after tax, really put a big dent into this home loan, which is a strategy that we really want to build and we really want to execute on, and have a view on, okay, well, maybe this is going to take us 7 years to do this effectively. But if business does go up and we're making more money, perhaps, we can cut that down to 5. And what's really important about this strategy is, when we're looking to make these debt reductions, it's not just paying off the home loan and forgetting about it. We're going to do what we call debt recycling. And the reason we like to debt recycle is, when we pay down that home loan debt, we want to give that debt back to us in interest-only cash outs that we're going to use within phase 2. So phase 1, just to summarize, is about using this income strategically, making those distributions strategically, and really putting that money towards the repayment of that debt, while debt recycling the home loan, using that for resi investments, which we'll cover in phase 2, but also making sure that we're banking money in our bucket, which we can use in phase 3, and also for future distributions depending on where we land. So phase 2 is where we want to look to leverage the great work that we've done within phase 1. We want to use our cash outs and the debt recycling that we've already done to build out a residential portfolio. At the moment, if we've only got a family home worth $5 million, we actually have no wealth that's actually generating us any income aside from the business. So what we really need to focus on here is diversifying and building out multiple assets that are going to work for us in terms of capital growth and in terms of income that over time will all increase in value. And we want to get this portfolio to a level that's going to give us enough capital growth that is potentially going to give us enough net profit to be able to deleverage this portfolio in time and then redeploy that capital into potentially paying down debt on any remaining homes that we have, or deleveraging our commercial strategy, which is something we're going to go into in a minute. The amount of property that we need to acquire is very different for everybody, because once we can get those granular numbers, we can have a view of, okay, well, perhaps we need to acquire $8 million of property today, but in 10 years time, we need that to look like 16 million. So we can take that profit, that 8 mil, and use that to deleverage, say, our commercial property or any remaining resi properties to be able to unearth that yield. So within this strategy, it's really about taking the great work that we've done from phase one, putting it into assets that diversify outside of our family home and outside of our business, but sets a really strong foundation where we can look to leverage capital growth and resi debt at those higher LVRs while we continue to bank that cash in the bucket that we're not using to debt recycle. So let's go to phase three. Once we've finished phase one and we've redeployed that equity into phase two and we've built out that foundational portfolio, we need to then think about, okay, well, if we're going to deleverage and sell down these resi assets, when do we go into commercial? And for the investors that we see that are earning over $1 million a year, commercial can be a strategy that we implement within the first couple of years, potentially straight away, depending on how much liquid cash we're sitting on. And the reason why commercial from the start can make a lot of sense is that if we have a lot of cash sitting in a bucket company, so let's just say we have 2 mil that we've saved through strategic distributions and potentially deleveraging other investments that weren't performing, we could potentially buy the jewel in the crown straight away. So it's not about waiting until the end of our journey to be able to deleverage from resi property and earn the income at that point. We can actually just go, okay, well, we actually have the ability and the serviceability to buy the asset that we want to hold long-term now. So why don't we do that? Because if we do that now, we can enjoy the CPI increases in rent. We can enjoy capital growth on that asset. Perhaps we're buying in an area that we can reposition the tenant and get some uplift in that as well. So for those people who are making great income from their business, there are options where we can actually bring commercial, it's a commercial property, along for the journey earlier. And that's where we might leverage this $2 million in a bucket and borrow 3. So we've got a $5 million asset. And while it's geared to, let's call it 60 or 70%, because we've used cash as our deposit, we're actually going to be cash flow positive, potentially 120 grand if we're getting a 6% net yield. So what that does for our accumulation journey is if we have resi properties and we've got a negative cash flow of, let's just call it 100, because we've been really aggressive and we've grown a large portfolio, because we put cash into the commercial, we're actually positive on that side. So if we look at what our net property investment cash flow is, we're still positive $20,000. So what that does for those that have that strong cash holding is, while resi can be cash flow negative and be a drain, and while we have that cash to cover that, because we've been using the income we're generating strategically, we can put that into great assets where these are going to be the jewel in the crown. This is what we want to look to deleverage in time to really unearth that profit and deleverage our reliance and de-risk our reliance on the business. However, along the way, we're not at a significant deficit because we've done that strategically. High income doesn't automatically create wealth. The difference is when you have a clear strategy and structure. If you would like to understand what your own strategy could look like, I've included a link below where you can learn more about how we help clients build their own path to financial freedom. Because the goal isn't just to earn more money, it's to turn that money into assets that work for you.